Batman!
Welcome everyone, this is the first actual episode I've uploaded of JC's Customs here. I plan to upload a lot more. I have many customs that I've done in the past, some that I've done for myself and some that I've done for other people. I thought the one that I would like to open my channel with is one I've done just recently here, is a Batman Raphael, or BatRaph as we're kind of calling him. This was an idea that someone at the comic shop that I go to nearby wanted me to do. He said that he had always kind of had this idea, and I guess kind of always either wanted this figure, at least wanted to see this concept, and I guess he had never had anyone able to do that for him before, so I decided I would take on the project. As you can see, what he wanted was kind of a Batman Ninja Turtle fusion. He actually, when proposing the idea to me, didn't really even care which Ninja Turtle, although he said he thought Raphael would be the best choice, and I agree. I think the size go well with Batman's aesthetic, although again, you really could have used any of them, at least from the classical Ninja Turtles. I know there's been many different updates over the years. I went with a figure that you see here originally because I was hoping to have a really posable figure for him, to have a really nice figure. If you go back and look at many of the original figures, they're relatively lacking articulation, or at least lacking a lot of articulation. However, I kind of think that was I don't know about mistake, but kind of a downfall of this figure, because a lot of the joints on here are really weak. I'm kind of used to customizing things like Transformers or Gundams or other model kits, and the nice thing about those, even in the Transformers, is you can usually take them pretty much completely apart if you have the right tools, and that allows you to work on the joints, or that allows you to work on the adding or subtracting weight in different places, versus a character like this, versus a figure like this, that in all honesty I couldn't take apart very much. So it was kind of problematic in a number of ways, but I do think that it turned out pretty well. The joints I had to paint several different times, kind of like fold the elbow, paint the outside, and then fold it back the other way and paint the inside, which again is something that I don't usually have to do on Transformers. Sometimes when I paint like a Transformers Masterpiece figure, where I'm not comfortable taking apart really fine joints because I'm afraid I'm going to break them, or when I have to knock a pin out and I'm afraid I'll break it. But for the most part, this was a kind of a different experience, but I still rather enjoyed it. A lot of the detail you see on here is sculpted. I've sculpted, if we look down here on the elbows, both of these gauntlets here have these spikes. Obviously the whole cowl, and we'll look at that in a little bit more detail here in a second. The cape is sculpted, and then down here again, and I'll show this to you in a second, are the boots. Those are also sculpted. Now this person who wanted this figure, his original idea was the Ninja Turtles found a costume in the sewers, found Batman's costume in the sewers somewhere, so it kind of has the idea to be kind of beat up, and besides that, you also have to imagine, a turtle or an anthropomorphized turtle fitting itself into Batman's costume. So again, it was kind of a challenge for me, and it was definitely something out of what I normally do, but I do think it turned out pretty well. So let's take a little bit closer look here at it. So if we look at the face of BatRaph, you'll see that I've completely painted everything, so everything is completely new and completely painted. It was a nice project because for the most part, he wanted me to just kind of take it away and kind of do my own thing. The only thing he suggested or kind of said he wanted was for one of the ears to be kind of flopped over, kind of bent. So you can see as I was sculpting the ears here on the cowl, I did go ahead and sculpt both of them in pretty fine detail, and then this one I just went ahead and sheared off once it was dry but before I painted it. And then over here I did do a little flop while it was still wet, because that's something specifically asked for, and I do think it looks really nice. Again, you probably wouldn't imagine that a turtle fitting into a Batman costume would necessarily be the most fitting costume for him. Now, another thing I did is I did go ahead and sharpen these sides here. I did go ahead and sharpen them to a point, and of course they've been completely repainted and everything else. The only problem is, if you look down here on the actual belt of the figure. He has some actual pretty nice storage here. It's supposed to be for those weapons, for those sais. The problem is the sais, like many things that are kind of pointy or sharp or pokey, they are made out of that softer plastic, so they don't retain paint as well. So I did originally try to store them in those belt loops, but then when I took them out, they lost a lot of their paint. So then I ended up redoing their paint, and I'm just going to give him to my friend here with these weapons just attached in the hands here. And again, he can take them out and you can still put them in the belt. It's just I can't guarantee that the paint's not going to come off after you put them in. Now, as far as sculpting, again, I really wanted things to have kind of a worn look, so you can see that there on the head I've got some worn cowl look. You can also see that the bandana is still there in the back, because again, I wanted this to look like he just found it in the sewers and he just threw it on. So I've actually got that there's a big hole in the back with the turtle skin still showing through there on both the top and the bottom, and the bandana's coming out. The cape's kind of torn and ragged. It's got some weathering on the bottom, as do the boots. The boots are just kind of sculpted with some weathering, and over here on this side you can see that I have the toe of the turtle still sticking out there, which again I thought was just kind of a nice touch. The only articulation that the figure's actually lost is there on the feet. The original figure actually had 2 articulated toes on each hand and on each foot, and I did go ahead and get rid of those. Down here on the bottom, the original stand came with was just this kind of cheap, in my opinion, looking metallic-y gray. So I did go ahead, I gave it a black paint because I wanted it to look, dirty, sewer lid, big city type thing. And then on the inside, I did go ahead and dry brush silver, and then I did go ahead and dry brush the Teenage Mutant Ninja, painted the turtles, and then I did go ahead and mask off where it originally said Raphael, as you can see, and I left that there, added a couple of bat water slide decals. I think those worked okay. I think those look nice, but for the water slide that I decided to use on the chest, I don't think it came out quite as well as I would have liked. Surprisingly, and I may just not know where to look, I don't do a whole lot of Batman customs really at all, so I may just not know where to look for those type of things, but the water slides that I could find weren't that high quality. He did like the original Ninja Turtle design, so I kind of went with those, and since I was kind of going with those, I wanted to go with sort of an animated Batman look from the 90s as well. So I kind of wanted to do a combination of animated Batman and Raphael here. I also did sculpt on a couple of pouches to his cloth belt to kind of add on a little bit more Batman touch to the overall design. But overall, I think it came out relatively nice. Again, if I could do it again, I might go with either a more simple design character, a little bit less articulation, as odd as that sounds. I had a couple other ideas, one of which was to sculpt a secondary cape, one that maybe you could have him kind of leaning this way, kind of flowing in the wind, but rather than flowing in the wind like you might expect with your Batman pose, I kind of wanted to have one of the other turtles kind of holding the cape and kind of waving it, kind of making it look like a turtle cosplaying as Batman a little bit more. And maybe in the future I still might go ahead and make a couple of other turtles as, Nightwing or Robin or something else. And then that way, if I did decide to sculpt some of those other cape details, some of those other types of details, I could sculpt them directly made for those to hold on to. And therefore, maybe between the 2 turtles, they could support the weight of it just kind of floating out there in the air. I did want to leave as much articulation as possible, and this is a very highly articulated figure. And I think I did a pretty good job of that. I don't know how much he'll miss the toe articulation on the feet, but the ankles, the knees, the thigh swivels, everything else is still there, and for the most part it's pretty well painted. The head loses a tiny bit of articulation, it's just on a ball joint, and because the cape kind of has to go between the head and the shoulders there, it can't look down as far or back or up as far, so you can't bend it back quite as far, but for the most part it's still relatively posable. Other than that, guys, if you have any ideas for me in the future to do different types of customs on, I'm always open for ideas. So feel free to hit me up on Twitter. Feel free to comment here. I also do plan to start both filming the actual process of making these customs and uploading those to YouTube, but I think I'll probably try to be streaming them live. So again, I'll put links for all of that stuff in the description. But other than that, thanks for watching.